Hi. Are you ready? Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being here. My name is Nicola Maria Coppola. I come from Italy. I am the Secretary General of a non-profit organization, and it's an honor for me being here and moderating this very high-level panel with such important and prominent personalities. We are going to listen to the voice of the current European leadership and the voice of the leaders of the future. And we will divide the panel into rounds. During the first round, I'll give the floor to the panelists. And during the second round, I expect you to ask questions about the topic, curiosity, and what you have in mind. Just to introduce the panelists that we have, from the left, from my left, we have Marcin Przed, who is the Vice President for Foreign, the Vice President, sorry, is the Executive Director of the Foreign Affairs Office at the Council of the Presidency here in Poland. Then we have Anna Birkel, who is the Chair of the Committee for European Affairs at the Chamber of Deputies in Romania. Then we have Zanda Lukasevica, who is the Parliamentary Secretary for European Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia. Christian Fries Bach, who is the Executive Secretary, United Nations Economic Commission for European Union. Jan Krzysztof Bielecki, who is the former Prime Minister of Poland and Chairman of the Partner Board, of course, of Poland. Margarida Marques, who is the Secretary of State for European Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Portugal. And last but not least, we have Amer Benouda, who is a young leader, Senior Local Coordinator of European Students for Liberty. So, let's start from an obvious fact. I will just take 5 minutes to introduce the team, and then I will give the floor to the panelists. Let's start from an obvious fact. The social and demographic structure of European society is changing. People are living longer and population levels are declining to lower fertility rates. Thus, in the future, youth will become a minority in an aging society. Their influence within the democratic system will decrease, and youth-related subjects and needs may lose weight in political debates and the decision-making process. Nowadays, in Europe, we as young are almost 90 million, and we represent the 5th% of the European general population. Many problems are rising in Europe, especially affecting youth. And according to a survey of the European Commission, young people do not believe they can influence the decision-making process. We will find out all this kind of issue during our session. The first question that I want to ask is for Mr. Bielecki. And as a former Prime Minister of Poland, how did you deal with youth during your presidency in 1991? And what do you suggest to the leader, the current leader at European level, in approaching youth? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a unique pleasure to be in a place where I'm probably the oldest. I used to be always the youngest. When I went to the school, I was only 6.5 years old, and I went straight to the 2nd grade because my grandmother pushed me to accelerate my education. So I graduated when I was less than 21, and then I was the youngest Prime Minister of Poland, and then after 27 years of transition, I learned that I'm the oldest, And so to talk to the young and to address them is therefore not that easy, because I remember when my young colleague, aged 15, came to me to his, when I was invited by his family to a dinner and said, I would like to say goodbye because I'm leaving to meet my friends. I said, oh, of course, I understand. It's not a pleasure or interesting to sit with the old people, so feel free and go. And then he disappeared, but one or an hour and a half later, I realized that he is still in the house. So I asked him, I stopped him when he was passing by maybe to the kitchen and said, you said an hour and a half that you are going to meet your colleagues, probably you are going to the yard, as we in the old days used to call it, but I noticed that you are still in the house. Yes, I have a meeting with my friends on the server. Okay, then I understood that a meeting on the server doesn't mean that you have to leave your house. And then I learned that he was playing with some actually Danish and British colleague against some Germans in a kind of a Star Wars game. So, okay. So now, without leaving your home, you could meet your friends with a completely different world for me. Okay, but normally we are not used to answer the questions, but this time let me be very disciplined and answer the question. So in the early days of transition, which was very dramatic because contrary to the countries like Czechoslovakia or Hungary, Poland was in a terrible shape, was effectively economically bankrupt, politically divided, and so on and so on. And we had plenty of problems with our neighbors and with Germans in particular. And we actually didn't have even an agreement on the border with Germany at the time. So we negotiated with Germany a big treaty on cooperation and so-called good neighborhood. And then through that treaty, we also established a very strong vehicle for kind of a reconciliation between the youth of Poland and Germany. Because at that time, for the young Poles, it was obvious to have a colleague, I don't know, in France or in Italy or in England, but to look at the young German as a friend was much more difficult. So also we established that vehicle, also based on the experience of French and Germans regarding reconciliation between those two nations after the Second World War. So following that good example, we open up a lot of channels for communication. And I remember when I signed the treaty on that very special day, I said that we just opened the new book in the relationship between Poland and Germany. And it's up to the young to shape it in the future. And probably today the communication between young Poles and young Germans is very, very different than it was 27 years ago. So I can say that the young did their job pretty well. And on top of it, we should mention a lot of common endeavors regarding education, including education at the university level. We established a common university in Frankfurt on Oder River. So when you open the channels, the young are pretty good in filling them up with a lot of ideas. But the old should just facilitate. They should never advise or preach, even this is the best expression. Never preach the young, because they will always go other way around, like that young boy who went through the server to meet colleagues. Okay, thank you. Next time, if you want me to speak longer, no problem. So
That's fine.
I try to be short.
Do you want me to ask the second question now or during the second round? During the second round.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's give others a small chance.
It's fine.
And then I will dominate completely.
Okay. Let's give the floor to Margarita Marques. She's Secretary of State for European Affairs at the Portuguese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, let me start to give a warm welcome to my colleagues in the panel. And also to the audience. It's an honor for me to speak for all of you. I can confess to you that in the beginning, before this, we start the panel, the moderator asked me if I could speak about how to mobilize young people or youth for civic political participation. And my answer was, no, I prefer to go on what I had prepared. Because for me, it's a very, it's a debate that we can do always. We never finish this debate. We have new realities. For example, when we speak about, sometimes I listen to say that young people, they don't participate in political life, on society, but it's not true, because they participate, you are here, they participate through new ways, and for me it's also a debate that I had on since 1974. It means when the revolution took place in Portugal, we had a dictator before, and we start with the democratic system on 1974. And it was the moment where we could create youth organizations. During 70s, I was the leader of a political youth organization, and on beginning of 80s, I was the Secretary General of a political youth organization. And at the moment, it was not the case nowadays, but at the moment I was the first woman Secretary General of a political organization. But I think that you had the same situation. It means after the revolution on 1974, we had a lot of people on the streets. But now it's more difficult to mobilize people to participate. So I think that maybe you have the same debate that you had in Portugal. But I'd like to go ahead with a debate on Europe and youth people. As Secretary of State of European Affairs, is my main subject, and I think that it's very important that the moderator introduce the debate on that way. So, what lies ahead for Europe in the next decade, and what role young leaders should or could be have on it? Of course, no one knows what kind of Europe we will have in the next 5 or 10 years, especially nowadays when we are dealing with huge and defining challenges such as terrorism, migration, or the Brexit. The final outcome of these events could change Europe we know today in an unpredictable way. Let's just remind that only 10 years ago, Europe and the euro area were both growing faster than ever And 5 years later, the euro was on the verge of collapsing. But if you don't own the future, we have at least a starting point. And this starting point is, we know the Europe we want and the goals we need to achieve it. And together with my political family, I'm a member of the Party of European Socialists. We are working to implement a new social and economic model in Europe. A model that supports growth and jobs, favors environmental, economic and social sustainability, and reduces inequalities. With a toolbox of progressive reforms, we are keen to promote a real alternative to the politics of cuts and lowest social standards. With measures ranging from decent wages, quality public service, fair taxation, investment in education and clean technology, we don't want merely more jobs, growth and investment. We want better jobs, more sustainable growth, more efficient investment, and less inequalities among people and countries. We need to change the Europe we built in the last decade. A Europe plagued with growing nationalism, poverty, inequality, youth disaffection, mass immigration. In the last 8 years, we watched the erosion of the European project in the world. A project once seen as role model for peace, tolerance, culture, welfare, social and economic integration, and respect for the rule of law between almost 30 countries. But to turn this page, we need the support of the young generations, the future leaders of tomorrow. It's them who will lead and define our badly needed new Europe. In the recent crisis, the young generations were forgotten. They suffered and carried a big burden on their shoulders, facing unemployment, unstable, low-paid jobs, job insecurity, permanent internship, or in countries like Portugal, forced to immigrate to other regions of the world. Since 2011, more than 500,000 people left Portugal due to the financial crisis and the Troika bailout. Most of them were our best and better educated, like doctors, engineers, or nurses. Europe, in its quest for economic recovery, though austerity, simply put aside its most valuable asset, its young generation. European leaders should admit that we failed on them, and it's time to bring them back to the center of political, social, and economic debate for the upcoming Europe. Our young generations of today are not only the most well-educated, well-traveled, or most connected of all. They are also the generations that lived and felt the European model work at its best. The majority traveled all over Europe, freely, with no borders. Some studied in a university abroad through the Erasmus program. During their Erasmus, they lived and connected with several other fellow Europeans, learning and absorbing the multi-language, multicultural, multiracial culture that shapes the core of being European. Most of them paid also their expenses through a single and strong currency, the euro. That's why these are the better prepared generations to expand, improve, and recover the European project in the future. They lived and saw with their own eyes the advantages of being European. We need not only a new and better Europe, but also a younger Europe. A region prompting innovation, freedom of movement, and freedom of speech. A region booming on new ideas, and most importantly, a strong will and courage to deal with challenges ahead. When we debate the European crisis, politicians tend to forget to listen to the youth regarding their desires, needs, and views. This proved to be a costly and huge mistake. As we look today to the political scene in Europe, some of the biggest political parties are watching in disbelief their young voters increasingly turning their back on them. They accuse them of lack of vision, inability to read the changes, or the wills of their younger population. Let me give you a short example. A recent survey made by Politico Europe to 68 young leaders in Europe revealed that the biggest challenge facing the young people in Europe is not terrorism, Brexit, or migration. Far from it. The main challenge, the survey said, is unemployment with 62%, followed by lack of economic growth with 19%. Terrorism, Brexit, and migration were referred each by less than 5% of the respondents. This is the kind of message that politicians should listen. Besides Brexit and terrorism, we will also have to tackle the problem of unemployment or weak economic growth with the same determination. As I said earlier, we don't want merely jobs, growth, and investment. We want better jobs, more sustainable growth, and a more efficient investment. It's all part of the same package. Also, we need to implement and improve our single market, namely our digital single market, which is set to be a fundamental axis of the current and future European construction. The single digital market is a crucial and essential tool to create more growth and better jobs in the future. We also need to make EU single market freedoms go digital. Regarding the single digital market, Portugal sees a priority measures regarding the improvement of digital literacy, the industry digitalization, and the better digital infrastructures. To our young generations, we have to assure they have a fair chance to earn a decent living, have good careers, and support their families. To achieve this, we need to introduce reforms that establish a new growth model that provide quality jobs and sustainable European social model. For this ambitious social agenda, we support an equally ambitious European Youth Plan. We want a permanent and extended European Youth Guarantee, with a funding of 21 billion euros to be made available in the Youth Employment Initiative until 2020. This will widen the scope of beneficiaries by raising the age limit to 30 years and ensure good implementation and quality and sustainable offers. We want a true Erasmus for all by broadening Erasmus Plus in order to enable also all secondary school pupils and students engaged in vocational education and training to gain experience in the international exchange programs. But we also want to create an Erasmus for young entrepreneurs, a program that gives entrepreneurs the opportunity to go abroad, and the chance to see and experience what is being done in other member states in their fields of the work. This Erasmus will provide our young entrepreneurs a chance to learn, check the best ideas, and know which are the biggest challenges and difficulties in the several projects and markets in order to avoid the future mistake. There are just some of the examples of policies we need to implement to start to turn the page and build a Europe that protects its youngest citizens and also build a sustainable path for our current and upcoming young leaders to take the lead and expand and improve our continent. We will only make Europe free of nationalism, intolerance, terrorism, and further disintegration if you are able to provide our citizens an expectation and a guarantee that together we will be able to better deliver a future with better jobs, more sustainable growth, and innovative investment. All this supported by a vibrant and truly European youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margarita. We hope that in the next years, this project will be implemented and will succeed, because the challenges are too much, and so we should ask Brussels and we should all do something to change the current status quo. But let's listen to now the voice of a young leader, what a young leader think of the current situation in Europe. We were saying before that the participation of youth is transforming compared to the traditional youth participation. So I would like to ask Amer Benouda, Senior Local Coordinator of European Students for Liberty, why young people are disaffected with politics, and why the political participation of youth is decreasing. The floor is yours, Amer. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola Maria. Unfortunately, the young is disaffected more and more, not only from the politics, but all the fields. Personally, I have some friends who have never voted. And when we see all the figures from the European countries, we observe that the rate of the vote is very high. So, and I think the first political implication is to vote. So the voter disengagement is getting worse and worse. Anyway, to answer your question, I think there are three main reasons of the disengagement of the young with politics. If I take the first one, I think it's the low levels of trust in politics. I remember from one British study who showed that more than 80% in UK of young don't trust the politicians. And I think that the problem is here. If we take, for example, in the local level, we see the politician just during the election period, and after. And the second problem is it's the promises is usually achieved. If we say never achieved. So the politicians lose their first step, I think, to gain and to benefit the trust and the confidence of the young. This is the first reason. The second reason, I think that's often the current politicians, with all my respects for politicians here, they include and hire persons from their family, their personal network, and the most important is the meritocracy and the motivation, and not the proximity of the persons or the politicians. This is the reason I think why the young lose the trust on the politicians. The third and last reason is the motivation claimed and presented by the politicians. It's often they claim they should to be the first party or to gain other parties, but they forget that the most important is this implication, is political implication, is to be it's part of our responsibility regarding our country. So the parties, I think, forget this thing. And for this reason also, the young prefer to work for their country through NGOs and companies and not in politics. If I take, for example, from my own experience, I'm part of one political party in France. Since some years, I was approached by two parties. The reason of the first party, it was let's go to gain the local election and to have the work in the mayor. And the second party, where I'm part of now, it was if I can bring my little experience in entrepreneurship for our region and municipality. So this is the difference, I think, and the big difference between the party and party. And this is the three reasons of disengagement of youth from with politics.
Thank you. The scenario is clear. And just to add a brief note regarding the vote, which is becoming very low. We had the election in Rome for the mayor. Only the 35% of the population went to the election. Of these 35%, the 8.5% were made up of young people. So we should ask a few questions. So let's now pass to Mr. Christian Friesbach, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for the European Union. Europe is, as we have already said, facing many challenges in the last 2 years. Economic crisis, this big economic crisis, unemployment, the refugee crisis, Brexit, the rise of populism, the rise of right-wing parties, the building of walls all around Europe. So it seems that it's like a disaster. But the European leadership is currently dealing with these challenges in a way which is debatable. We could discuss all night long about the way in which the European leadership is dealing with. But I have a question. Should the young leaders, so the leaders of the future, adapt to the current system or change it from scratch? What do you think? Thank you. The floor is yours.
I think they should fix it and fix it together, hopefully. But let me also say I'm really happy to be here. I was teacher at university for many years, and if there's one thing I lack, being in the UN now, it is being with young people every day. So it's good to be here, and it's very good you organized this and you organized this debate. I'm very also worried about all the trends you say in Europe. Building walls, breaking ties, the crisis we see. And I'm reminded every single day about how serious this can become, because I work in Geneva, in the United Nations, and I work in something called the Palais des Nations. It's an enormous building. It's as big as Versailles in the middle of Geneva. And whenever I go to work, I'm reminded that that building was built not for the United Nations, it was built for the League of Nations that you established after the First World War. You established the League of Nations, you said never again war, and you got the League of Nations and you started to construct the headquarters in Geneva. What happened was we got a crisis, an economic crisis in Europe, you got migration problems, you suddenly had breakdown of trust between countries and the trust to political leaders. And in 1933, Hitler, he withdrew Germany out of the League of Nations. And almost exactly when this building I'm going into every day was finished in 1938, the Second World War broke out. So that building reminds me every single day of how important it is to stick together, to work together internationally. And what we see right now is taking us in the wrong direction. Now, I won't talk about the sanctions we see in Europe. They're there for a reason, and that's not for me to judge. But I can just say what we see is the exact wrong direction, and we have to reverse it. We have to re-establish a Europe working together, cooperating, integrating. Economic integration is absolutely key also, and to pursue it even further is absolutely essential. I read just a few days ago, I read a quote by Islamic State, and it's actually their goal. And the goal of Islamic State is to attack us and terrorize us until all neighbors fear each other. And that quote, we must make sure it does never happen. But if you see the signs in Europe right now, it is the direction we are taking. We fear each other. Trust is breaking down all over the place. We have hate crimes, we have hate speech, we have countries pulling out of international cooperation, we have countries pulling out of, threatening to pull out of the United Nations, we have countries pulling out and wishing to pull out of conventions, not respecting the international agreements they have entered into. It is deeply disturbing, and it's protectionism and it is nationalism. And then we have the international trade negotiations absolutely stopped for the past 10 years. I'm an economist actually, and trade economist. I did my PhD on how you add tariff rates. And if some of you wish to hear more about it, we can have a few hours outside. It was a very technical issue, but I'm a free trade fanatic. And not because free trade is going to save the world. Free trade can bring economic growth and jobs and all of that, and that's why free trade is important. But the main reason why free trade is important is because it forces countries to cooperate. It's the political effect of free trade. That's the most important effect of free trade, and we tend to forget it. So when the free trade negotiations internationally stop, then everything else slowly stops. Because when you have free trade, if you can't keep countries now, they believe we can keep problems out at our borders. We can just erect walls, and we can impose tariffs, and we can have new walls, and then we can solve our problems. But that is an illusion in a world of globalization, of a climate crisis and conflict, and economic crisis and migration crisis. But if you have free trade, then countries cannot stop the problems at the border anymore, and then they have to cooperate to solve them together. My organization is actually also a good example of that. We have been negotiating agreements between countries in Europe as free trade evolved during the past 70 years, and we host hundreds of norms and standards and conventions that have been negotiated throughout the European continent. Everything, all transport agreements, environmental agreements, actually hosted in my organization. And they came about because you couldn't stop the problems. You couldn't stop the air pollution, you couldn't stop the problems related to borders, and you wanted to promote trade. But if we suddenly allow countries to build walls again, then international cooperation will stop, and then the world will become an even more difficult place to live in. And that's the lesson from the Palais des Nations, and it's a lesson we need to remember today, and we need to reverse the path Europe is on right now, because it takes us absolutely nowhere. And we have to defeat the prophecy of Islamic State to make us all fear each other. And we have to defeat it by working together and standing together, international cooperation to a much further extent than we have ever seen before. That is what we need in Europe. And the one thing that gives me hope is you, because young people, and I have 3 kids your age, and they are so much more integrated in the world through the server or the cloud or the internet or through their studies or through their friends. And they may not vote, but they vote with their feet, and they travel throughout the world, and they talk and engage, and they know each other. And that gives me a little bit of hope. If we can mobilize young people, then I think we can mobilize the world, and we can mobilize young people. Let me just mention Pokemon Go. There we could mobilize millions of young people within 2 weeks and get them on the streets and talk and walk and discuss. And if we can do that with new technology and everything, I I'm still confident we can change the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So integration, cooperation are the key words. And connecting what you were saying, I would like to ask Zanda Lukasevica, is it correct? Parliamentary Secretary for the European Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Latvia. It's clear that, and it seems that the European Union is breaking up and is disintegrating for all the reasons that we were saying just before. We cannot predict the future of the European Union in the next decade, although this should have been the question of our panel. So I do not want to ask you, how do you foresee the European Union? But as we are all saying here that youth leadership is very important, in your opinion, what role should and will the youth play in shaping the form of the European Union in the next, let's say, 10 years? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and hello to everybody. It's my pleasure to be here, and actually it's my pleasure to be back in this forum because I was here also last year. And actually being a member of the group of Munich young leaders, I dare to say that I know how demanding the young leaders are. And it means that we have to be really good to keep your attention. So when we talk what the young leaders can do, or all the young people what can do for the Europe, it makes me to think about the quote of the George Bernard Shaw, who said that the people who get on in this world are the one who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, they make them. So it means if the European Union is not exactly as you would like to see it, you are the ones who could get up and change it, together with all the old elephants here on the stage, or in Brussels, or in Strasbourg, or in Geneva, etc., etc. So if I look where are we right now with the EU, I would say that the main weakness, or even the Achilles heel for the EU, is the communication. The communication with the public, the communication with all the voters, and engagement and explanation of what the Europe is doing, what the Europe is for, and why is it needed for me, and for you, and for you, and for all of us. So the communication is an important part to regain the trust and to regain the idea that it is the ideal we want to develop. And one of the reasons could also be the blame game. Majority of the politicians are playing here in Europe. When there is something, when something is going wrong, would it be terrorism, or would it be migration crisis, or would it be lack of jobs in small parishes? We usually say that Europe has not delivered all it needed to deliver, or I would say that we Europeize all the failures. But if there is something good, would it be a new bridge built with the help of the EU money, or a digital single market and cheaper roaming prices? We don't say exactly that that's the Europe. Especially the local leaders like to kind of nationalize all the good things that Europe has brought to us. So, and then we get the result that we don't like the EU. And also the situation is not so easy. Even if we don't talk about the migration or about the terrorism, look at the economics. So the economic system that is governed by the EU, the single market of the 28, it's so complicated. So it's so complicated to explain how it functions. And usually we don't like the things we don't understand, and we don't appreciate the things we don't like. But also for me, whenever I think about the idea of the EU and about the need of the EU, I always remember about the very fundamental need for the security, also the colleague mentioned, because the EU was created not to bring more money in our pockets, but to avoid war in the territory of the Europe. And I think it is the main thing. And also it's about the internal security, it's about the borders, it's about the external security, it's about controlling the migration, it's about the controlling or fighting against the terrorist threats. So it's all what we need. The Europe is about that. Just we are to do the things. The Brussels do it in a very complicated way because the system is huge, and huge systems usually are complicated ones. So what can we do? And so what would be the circumstances I would like to change to have the Europe I want to have tomorrow or after tomorrow? Then I would say that the balance between the different institutions in the EU is quite okay, and we should keep the balance, not to give too much power to Commission, not to give too much power to the Parliament, but keep the balance we have between the three main bodies. And I think we should also accept that the multi-speed Europe is a reality, and it will be the reality in the years to come. But we should keep the principle of consensus on the bigger issues, on the issues that will impact the lives of all the citizens. And we should keep all the 28 or maybe 27 after a few years around the table when we are taking the big decisions. But what would I like to change is to stop the shame and blame game I already mentioned. And both it's between the institutions and the member states, among the institutions and member states, and also among the politicians. And I think that indeed Europe needs to strengthen the principle of consensus, and we also should simplify the legislative process. I don't know, for example, if our dear colleague being a state secretary for the EU, could you explain in 1 minute the legislation process in the EU? I think then you would deserve a huge, I don't know, prize, yeah. I would need at least 5 minutes and a whiteboard to draw and to try to show all the players and how we come to a decision, for example, to lower the roaming charges in the EU, or to create a digital single market, or to create an energy union. And then we come to the communication. So we desperately need to improve the communication about the EU. And for example, why would my mom love Europe if it's about the CSDP? If it's about the security, then definitely. Or why would you like the FSCI, but you would like definitely to see economic growth and jobs? Or why would you give your voice and your vote in the elections for the DSM, but you would definitely like to develop new technologies and digital opportunities and creative industries? So we are too much into the Brussels language, we are too much in the abbreviations, and but still we are doing a pretty good job, and I'm sure that all of us, we do need the EU. We are much stronger when we work together, And I cannot imagine the Europe without the EU, without taking big decisions together, without sharing when something good happens, and without showing solidarity if the crisis and problems are there. So, and once again, be the ones who get up and change the circumstances you want to change.
Thank you. So once again, integration, working together, cooperation, maybe it is the only way to make the European Union surviving in the next decade. We will discuss later with the audience too. Now it's time to Anna Birchikl, Chair of the Committee for the European Affairs at the Chamber of Deputies in Romania. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And firstly, may I thank the organizer and tell you as much as I can in words how proud and how honored I am to be with you today. And I want to thank you, each of you and all of you, for taking time to be with us today. I know it's another important meeting as we speak now, starting with all the prime ministers in the main area. But, okay, without the press knowing, we are better off discussing with each other, because I'm hoping that, and I was challenged by our young leader, and I'm going to just take 1 more minute more than what you kindly gave me when we talked about my intervention, because I'm hoping that by the end of this discussion with you, you are not going to ask me the question that seems to be the question of my life. I am a lawyer by training, and I've been educated at Yale Law School, master and PhD in law, and I worked as a lawyer on Wall Street with one of the main firms. And for a lawyer and for somebody who study law as being their passion, which now it's a full disclosure because my husband knows, but probably many of you saw the movie The Firm with Tom Cruise. If you didn't see it, for the ones who loves law, I strongly recommend to see it. So I was here in, in New York, practicing as a lawyer exactly as I dreamed when I was in high school, in the university, and secretly in love with Tom Cruise from The Firm. And when I decided to quit the Wall Street and go back to Romania in 2003 and enter politics, and I'm teaching the first insolvency course in Romania, that's the question of my life, which I'm hoping that you are not going to ask me, why did you come home to your country and enter politics? Because, you know, the politicians are like that and like that. And you know what? Not all the politicians are like that and like that. And I think that it's about time for you to decide to get to know the politicians, the ones that deserved your trust and deserve your hopes, and get behind them and criticize them or encourage them. That was the bracket. Now, when Marek asked me to come to speak to you, I said to him, you know, okay, I'm very honored, but, you know, I'm 43, so what am I going to tell to a full, room of young, talented people on a subject that I love dearly, meaning European affairs? And to answer to the question, Europe in the next decade, the voice of the young leaders, how Europe will look. To be honest with you, Europe and European Union certainly will look better, much better, incredibly better, if your voices will be not just heard, but listened to. So now allow me just to share you from my experience as a chair of the European Affairs Committee in my country, in my parliament, with some things that I noticed over the few years. Firstly, goes without saying, and as my panelist kindly spoke to you earlier, that we've been witnessing in the past few years a crisis of leadership, not just in the EU and in Europe, but in the entire world. It's a crisis of leadership, which is probably one of the reasons why I trust, and I'm hoping in events like this one, that will create and will make for the future generation a possibility to really have that bridge between the actual establishment and the aspiration of the young leaders. And that goes a lot on your shoulders, because I assume that most of you, if not all of you present here, in one or another, are interested in politics, being politics as a politician in the constructive way. In my opinion, politician means, from the old times, when you are doing the policies for your community, or involved in one way or another in your respective communities. So if I have to not just give you an advice, because I'm not in a position to give you an advice, but to share with you a thought, will be that you should get more in touch and much more involved in day-to-day politics and to day-to-day lives. And now with the internet, with the Facebook, I'm telling you that in my team, at my committee and my MP office, I have most of my colleagues, because I call them colleagues and partners in this bumpy road sometimes, but very a wording road when you get something done, being small or big, but it's something that you can say at the end of the day, well, I've done a little bit better today. Most of them are from the internships that I organized, and I was very proud to see them caring and willing to stay and work with me and with my committee, because that's what politics is about, and that's where the future lies, in my opinion. I want to talk to you a little bit about the role of the national parliaments, which I think is something that was lacking in past years, and that's why probably we got the Brexit and we got the turbulence in Europe today. And coming back to what Europe is and what Europe was built on, as my friend was touching earlier, I do believe that it is our duty to continue the European project that we have inherited. And it is my duty, your duty, all of us' duty to, as the leaders of tomorrow, to maintain this line of conduct. Of course that the European project as it is today needs to be adjusted and needs to be taking into consideration the evolution of today and tomorrow. But even though EU is crossing very turbulent times, as I said, with a lot of threats and challenges coming not just from outside, but from our neighborhood as well, but from our internal vulnerabilities as well, and bureaucracy is one of them. I do believe that we can actually overcome that if we stay together and if we have an open mind, because nothing that we should do should remain outside the sound and an ambitious long-term vision fully committed to the European project. Some of my colleagues from the panel touched on the Brexit. I want to hear your voice and your thoughts on the Brexit, but in my humble view, it's just one example when one policy with the commas, respected commas, turned out to be more about the leadership of one party than the issues of that particular party. And it was very interesting for me, for the courageous leavers, that they were so courageous that the next day all of them ran away. So courageous, but that influenced quite a lot of youth in UK. And why I'm saying that, not just because I have a lot of friends there, but nobody is perfect, and I am married to a Brit for 18 years now. So, I kind of got that feeling from inside as well. That's why I'm saying that it is important to, and I'm expecting from you, to go beyond the appearances, to go beyond the perceptions, and to go back to the depth of the analysis, because very easily you can get misled. And maybe we, as we get older, can get easier misled, but I'm not expecting, and I don't want you to get misled just because some of them, are just saying words that sounds nice, but in reality are not without depth. Because I was raised especially by my mom's mom, and before she left this world, she said to me something that will always stay with me, and if you allow me, I can share it with you. And she said, I don't know if I can translate it exactly with the meaning in English, but it sounds like this. All people are passengers through life, but not all passengers that are passing through life are people in the human being sense. And never lie, even though you are in public life, in personal life, because you will be ending up by being caught by your own lies. And don't forget that just your actions will always show what you are, what you stand for, and what you are feeling. So that's why I'm expecting you to try to go beyond the appearances, because those are not reflecting all the time, or in many cases doesn't reflect the reality. Of course, I can go on. As you know, I can speak quite a lot as a lawyer. But when I was speaking to my team, and I said, look, what will be your advice to tell to our friends, which they will meet me for the first time, I will meet them for the first time. How do you think Europe will be, from their point of view? And I said, well, from our point of view, which they are close to your age because they are 24, 25, 26, they say, look, the mind, and I'm quoting because I need to actually quote them exactly. They say, the current process the European Union is passing implies redefining our European project, and that cannot be done without the involvement, the substantive involvement, 3 minutes, you see, of the youth. You just need to keep in mind that the youth have a clear idea about what should be done and about the world they would like to live in. And maybe people like you, Anna, meaning me, you need to start listening to them more often and actually take seriously into consideration what they say, even though they criticize you. And of course, they put a comma and said, that's not necessarily for you because you do listen to us. But the lesson is, yes, your mind is less poisoned than others. And probably for the European project going forward, it should be taking seriously into consideration your point of view and your ideas and your advices, because probably we are the one learning more from you. We talk here about, okay, the challenges that the EU is facing, but one thing that I want to touch along with the digital agenda, because that's here something which I believe it's something as a competitive advantage for you. As my 15-year-old son always says, Mom, you don't need all those fancy IT stuff because all you know is how to make a phone call and how to enter the internet. And that's true, because even though I'm not so old, I believe, I'm not in tune with your natural reaction to the internet and the digital agenda that the European Union is putting forward. That's something that probably you should get more involved in, not just Pokemon Go and whatever is going on at the present moment. I don't know if you catch some as we speak now. So, and I think another advantage where you can, when you can contribute very substantively, it's about the cultural aspect of Europe, of the European Union. Because you've been born and you've lived in a world free of boundaries. It's not like I am half and half, because I was old enough to see the communist period, but I was young enough not to be poisoned by it. You don't have that experience. You've been born in a free world, and I think, and now I'm closing because I don't want to really be told that I should keep quiet by saying that the way I see at the present moment European Union is, along with all the crises, migration, economic, wherever, the main and the most important crisis that we are facing is the crisis of trust. It's a crisis, it's a mistrust between some member states and the leadership in Brussels. There is a mistrust between some member states. There is a lack of trust in the viability of the European project going forward. And I think, honestly, here I have to have full disclosure, as the lawyer says, I am the most pro-European person that you can find in my country, because I don't see any way for Romania than be part of Europe. But that means being part of Europe. And here I don't agree with you, and I don't want to agree with you, not because you didn't say the realities, because I don't want that to become the reality in the future. I don't want a Europe with 2 speeds, 3 speeds, first tier, second tier, third tier of member states. That's not something I sign up as a country when I joined the EU. I think there is one way of going forward, and that will be a European project where we all can contribute and we all be proud of it, and most importantly, we all believe in the viability. And that's why I strongly believe that we can overcome all those crises that we are facing today if we stick together and regain that trust among ourselves, and among ourselves, meaning among the member states, among the contributions of the member states through their national parliaments to the elaboration of the laws and directives in the European Parliament and in the European Commission, and most importantly, the trust that we can have in going in the future. And here, nobody can help regaining that trust than you. And I'm not talking big words, it's just the reality as I see it. And as I said, I always benefited by having a lot of great people around me from your generation, because in this way I can stay with my feet on the ground, and I know I don't go in those areas where, you know, you can very easily go if you don't have people like yourselves. And that's why, and I'm closing now, by having the Facebook, and, you know, in my Facebook I answer personally, okay? So when I get a criticism, okay, I take notice of it. If I agree with it, I just shut up and take notice of it and take it into consideration. If somebody is not saying something is right, then I defend it. And that's the dialogue which I think you can heavily contribute it, because I am one of the beneficiaries from that type of communication and involvement. And thank you so much, and I look forward to some questions. And I apologize if I will.
Thank you, Anna. I have just a provocative comment. I could agree with you when you say that we should not consider all the politicians bad, but so youth should not consider, should trust politicians. But what the politicians are doing to gain the trust of all of us as youth, we will reply in the second round, okay. Now, last but not least, Mersen Peshdesh, sorry for the pronunciation, I tried many times, but it's so complicated.
It is
is the Deputy Director, and I'm right now, for Foreign Affairs Office at the Chancellery of Presidency in Poland. Many thanks for being here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've also read this 3 minutes paper, so I'll be trying to speak very fast and in a short way. Thank you very much for the invitation. You know, it's actually it's the first time I'm attending this kind of conference in this way as a panelist. Usually I was there as a member of the audience, and it's, you know, this change is yeah, interesting experience, but it also reminds me that I'm not that young as I think about myself. That's one thing. Another thing is that I remember from my university times that after 1.5 hour lecture, everybody is getting bored. So I would love to propose kind of a change, and I'll be speaking in Polish. Okay. Szanowni Państwo, Temat tego panelu, tak jak został mi on przedstawiony, to przyszłość Europy i ja rozumiem, że w kontekście przyszłości Europy rozmowa z młodymi ludźmi ma podstawowe znaczenie. To państwo są przyszłością Europy, a przewidywanie tej przyszłości w dzisiejszych czasach jest wyjątkowo trudne. Mamy zagrożenia, ja tutaj się pozwolę nie zgodzić z poprzednimi panelistami, że głównymi zagrożeniami jest kryzys ekonomiczny czy Brexit. Musimy pamiętać oczywiście również o zagrożeniach zewnętrznych, zarówno sytuacja na wschodzie Europy, jak i na południu, ale przede wszystkim zagrożeniem jest dla przyszłości projektu europejskiego jest próba dominacji jednych państw nad drugimi i próba akceleracji procesu integracyjnego, znaczy przyspieszania takiego ponad może nie tylko potrzeby, ale ponad możliwości, co w moim przekonaniu może powodować trudności, w zasadzie powoduje, bo odpowiedzią na próbę tego przyspieszenia są aktualne wyniki wyborów w Niemczech, w Austrii, rosnąca popularność pani Le Pen we Francji, więc to są zagrożenia, o których musimy pamiętać. Jak pan premier Bielecki jako ekonomista doskonale wie, w ekonomii są górki i dołki, czasami są dołki, ale później przychodzą góry i ekonomia jakby dalej się rozwija i dzieje się coraz lepiej. Natomiast co do samego procesu integracji europejskiej musimy pamiętać również o tych zagrożeniach. Młodzi ludzie, tak jak państwo, myśląc o przyszłości, muszą sobie zadawać pytanie, skąd czerpać inspirację dla dalszej integracji. Czy mamy zachować pewną ciągłość w stosunku do tego, co działo się dotychczas, czy raczej właśnie doprowadzić do zerwania tej ciągłości i proponować nowe idee, nowe ideologie, które mają nam tą integrację popychać. W moim przekonaniu w ostatnich latach następuje pewnego rodzaju zerwanie z ciągłością, z tym pomysłem, który mieli panowie Schuman, de Gasperi, Adenauer na projekt europejski, czyli projekt europejski oparty o 3 podstawowe filary, jak mówił ojciec Bocheński, na prawie rzymskim, na filozofii greckiej i na etyce judeo-chrześcijańskiej. To są 3 wyznaczniki naszej tożsamości i w moim przekonaniu w oparciu o te 3 wyznaczniki należy tenże proces procedować. Z niego oczywiście można i należy interpretować to, że Europa jest kontynentem wolności, ale też solidarności, o czym my w Polsce bardzo dobrze wiemy i to jest nasz, mam nadzieję, wkład w historię Europy. To jest Europa oczywiście też tolerancji i współpracy nie tylko poszczególnych państw, narodów, ale też poszczególnych ludzi. Dlaczego o tym wszystkim mówię w kontekście państwa, w kontekście młodych ludzi? Dlatego, że wydaje mi się, że ta refleksja wśród młodych ludzi niestety nie jest najczęściej obecna. W dzisiejszych czasach proponuje się taki model rozwoju osobistego opartego właśnie o kolejne staże, o procedowanie swojej kariery w oparciu o zdobywanie kolejnych doświadczeń, podróże, rozmowy, spotkania, a nie wraca się do tych rzeczy, o których wspomniałem, nie wraca się do refleksji intelektualnej. Więc mój taki apel jako człowieka, jeszcze tak jak mówiłem, niedawno będącego po państwa stronie, trzeba czytać i to czytać klasyków myśli europejskiej. Nie mówię tutaj tylko o filozofach oczywiście greckich, ale i XVIII wiek, oświecenie, poprzedzający humanizm. Po prostu trzeba czytać, żeby nikt nie powiedział tak jak kiedyś powiedział Stanisław Lem, o swoim pokoleniu, parafrazując Gorgiasza, że nikt nic nie czyta, a jeśli nawet czyta, to nie rozumie, a jak rozumie, to i tak nie ma z kim o tym pogadać. Więc w kontekście przyszłości Europy nie odrywajmy się od swoich korzeni, studiujmy to, czytajmy i nie dajmy tego naszego projektu europejskiego, tej najpiękniejszej rzeczy, jaka się przytrafiła w naszym pokoleniu, nie dajmy jej po prostu zepsuć. Dziękuję.
Now it's your turn. I hope that you have some questions, curiosity. Please feel free to ask and let's start the debate. We have 20 minutes, so I think the best way is to collect, let's say, 2-3 questions. The guests will reply and then we will start. What do you think? It's okay?
Hi, I'm Marcel Lesik from Poland. I just want to say, as this so-called leader of tomorrow, as was stated in the title, to respond to a few positions, as you said. Firstly, to Mr. Christian Bach, as you said, you are a free trade fanatic. So I have a question: why are you supporting protectionist tariff-imposed EU, who by the action to impose tariffs for countries outside the EU, make it harder for example, African agricultural countries to develop and to grow faster in their economies? And secondly, to respond to one of the sentences as a honorable lady next to you said about the populism. Actually, I want to point out that the biggest wave of the populism in Europe was actually in the 90s and at the beginning of the 21st century, where the populists actually get into power in Europe, and by their irresponsible overspending, they create the terrible economic disaster the countries are dealing with now. And to say something about Brexit, as you kindly ask us to the opinion about that, I want to point out that actually about the turnout, I think it's quite remarkable that overall turnout in British referendum was 72.2%, and the turnout by young people was 36.2%. So that says something about political engagement of young people. And even they say now that there was a very important topic for them, numbers say it's otherwise. And of course, the biggest problem for European politicians now, I think, which you all have to face, is how to respond to the problems which are raised by disengaged people all over the Europe and the world. Brexit is only one example, but as we see in the United States, politicians can't really answer the problem. Like in Britain, they try to engage all the authorities there, and it works the other way around than they thought. Actually, people voted against the authorities, against the establishment, and that was the idea. And people in the political scene, for me, don't have an answer for that. And if you ignore the voice, it will be later it will be worse, not better. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Socrates. I come from Cyprus. So the first question I would like to ask is regarding the aging population of some countries. So I'm just wondering what our generations, the younger generations, will have to face in the future, and how you think we can actually regulate this in order to not be such a difficult issue in the future. And the second thing that I wanted to ask is during the voting for Brexit, Many people argued that there is not enough democracy in Europe because of certain positions were taken in a way that might not have been as democratic or as in a way that they would want them to be. So I just wanted you to comment on this. Thank you.
Another question? The third one, and we will start.
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin. Thank you very much, Anna Birkel, for putting the right words in and probably closing longly but surely. Thank you very much. I guess, so I work for a big IT company, and the majority of the time I work with technology, obviously. And although the technology is not quite sure, sometimes I guess it's going to get better. And then to touch upon what you were saying and what Hamir was saying is about trust. And then trust means transparency. And I don't believe that today, as a voter, we have any transparency. Especially, I'm French living in UK, so I know about Brexit, obviously, and then you can guess which side I voted. But surely, since we are going to a more AI, artificial intelligence-oriented era, I do believe that sometime, probably, and I'm pointing you guys, I believe that you probably are not the right person to take the decision. And then, so sorry to be very sharp, but I guess this is the goal of the debate. I think we should give the technology to take the decision based on the economic fact, based on the population need, and then not serving anyone more than another, because all countries, we are all on the same boat. At the end, there is no France, Germany, Portugal, or whatever. There is only one world where we are dictated by the resources, and the resources should lead us. Not any other country, not any other political angle. I just believe that we should be leaded and we should not be leader. So that's my debate. I open it to you. Thank you.
There is, the lady there.
Hello, my name is Anastasia. I'm representative of Ukraine, and I want to ask a question, but first a bit of introduction. And the majority of a force of humanity is now young, and it's after the standard of the United Nations between the age of 15 to 24, and the majority of young people are now in the developing countries, and according to the United Nations Population Fund, they have launched a program that is to ensure young people are heard, and it is really nice, and we appreciate that. But the question is, you didn't mention such a problem or benefit, I don't know, such as a youth bulge. And I'm really interested, that's why I have two questions. The first one, do you find the youth bulge a demographic dividend or demographic bomb in developing countries? And what are the effects of huge bounce on the civil society? Thank you.
Who would you like to start? It's up to you.
Okay, can I break the ice? I apologize, I didn't catch your name. The first speaker. You said quite a lot of interesting things, but I agree with you partially. The fact of the matter is that I will play back to you the same question. How would you be more engaged? Because I'm giving you the following example, as I live it now. And this goes to you as well. And here is exactly the reality. One success story, and let's see how it's going to develop. I will report back after I get back home. The success story, I was in Romania, we didn't have the personal insolvency law. My specialty as a lawyer was about insolvency. And when I got back to Romania, I managed in 3 years, I'm sitting elections in a few months, so wish me luck now. I hope you wish me luck. So as a MP at first mandate, it was my ambitions to do something based especially on my expertise as a lawyer as well, along those other projects that I had. And I managed through 3 hard working years to pass the first personal insolvency law in Romania. I could have not done that without a huge public support that I had and a lot of advices and a lot of support and engagement from people like you and a lot of other people, older a little bit with more experience than young in spirit. That was the success story. Now, what I am facing today, because you were talking about transparency, and I give it back to you and please answer to me. I've been one of those politicians which I always said that I will advocate for policies, not just be popular. So another piece of law that I initiated and it's about to pass now, it's about the credits. And when I tell the people the reality and say, look, this is version A, B, and C with all the attached risks, even though it's not the most populist one, because it is not, it's based on facts, as you said. The fact analysis and the reality, what can you do as a legislator respecting the separation of powers in a country. And you know what? It's another colleague of mine from another party who came with a very populist approach. And I'm losing as we speak. Arguing, including on Facebook, when I say, hang on a second, look at the facts, because that populist is going probably to pass because it's an election year and a lot of people will vote just because they want to vote, not believing in their vote or not having the responsibility of the vote, and that will be attacked at the Constitutional Court and is not going to be applied. Who is going to win in this debate? Me, as I am honest and very transparent and tell the facts, the realities, or the populist one? I think the populist is winning so far. Keep fingers crossed and maybe I won after this debate. But then you were talking about let's have policies and do the policies based on just numbers. In some domains, yes, but in others, no. And I'm giving you the education domain where you play with the inverted commas, with the souls and the futures. And to me, always, any penny that you spend on somebody's education is not an expenditure, it's an investment in the present and in the future. So every single child, doesn't matter where he's been born, it's in a humble village from Romania or is in the most successful city in London, neighborhood in London, has the right to education. Going to your analysis, if you go to the numbers, then you say, well, there are not enough kids in that village in Romania, so let's cut that school there and move them 5, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers away. So I agree with you partially, but take into consideration there are some domains where you can do that, and that's about the policies. And the last word, when you said about leading, not being led by or to, that's all depending on you. You can very easily lead a politician if you get behind them with advice, with criticism, and with just honest opinion, not playing politics, because that's the real source for one politician if he's smart enough to appreciate that source.
Christian.
Thank you very much. There was one specific question to me from Marcin, I think. I think you misunderstood. I'm not from the European Union. I'm from the United Nations. And I actually used most of my when I was young, most of my life fighting against the agricultural policy of the European Union, because I would think it was so wrong. And I think it was a historic mistake. If we had opened up back then, 25, 30 years ago, to all Northern Africa. They could have produced the apples and the oranges and the tea and the wine that we are producing. It would have created growth and jobs for all the young people in the Arab world and North Africa, and it could have made a huge difference. And the same for many other parts of the developing world. They had huge opportunities exporting agricultural goods to us, and we kept them out. And that's the reason why I became an economist. I used my child. I was importing fair trade coffee and tea and all kind of fair trade goods from developing countries when I was at university. That was what I did in all my spare time. So I fully agree with you. Historic mistake, and some of the bad policies are still there, and they have to be dismantled. And that's why I'm a free trade fanatic, as I said, because it can create growth and jobs, but it will also tie us together, and we have to find solutions together. Jacques Delors, who created the common market in Europe, he knew it. He did the common market because he knew it would create growth and jobs, yes, but also because he knew then we had to cooperate in the European Union on so many other issues. And that is exactly what we need in the world. Open it up, and then let's find the solutions together. Now, I'm from the UN and not the EU, as said, and this is to Martinique, who said about big data, and I'm absolutely fascinated by it. And in my part of the UN, actually, we host the work on big data and modernization of statistics. 10 years ago, you had less than 10, or you had, a few years ago, you had only 10 billion devices connected to the internet. 10 years from now, you will have 1 trillion devices connected to the internet. They will all assemble data and send it up in the cloud. This is big data. It's mind-boggling, you know. And if with machine learning, this form of artificial intelligence, we can really digest a lot of data here, and we can get good decisions. Already now, Microsoft in India, for instance, are helping schools, and with big data from schools and information, they can help predict which kids might fall out of school. And they can help them thereby to do better and stay in school. You can use it to really inform good decisions, but I do not, like Anna, believe it can take decisions for us. But we need significantly better and much and more data. And then we need to make it available. In my part of the UN, we also host a convention called the Aarhus Convention. And I'm one of the few people who can pronounce it, because Aarhus is a Danish town, and I'm from Denmark. But the Aarhus Convention is a beautiful convention. It's access to information, and it is public participation in decision making. It gives you the right to get access to information. And every single week or day almost around in Europe, and all countries here are member of the Aarhus Convention, citizens and civil society use it to force the governments to give them data and information so they can take better decisions. So I agree with you. With big data, machine learning, and access to information, we can turn decision making upside down, and we can give citizens an entire new role in taking and helping to take better and stronger decisions. And then finally, Socrates, the aging generation. Now, I think a lot of things will turn upside down in the coming years as well. The fourth industrial revolution, as you call it, linked to what I just said, is going to change things in the entire world significantly. The huge opportunity, the melting of information technology, biology, economics, technology, services, goods, products, is going to change the entire world in 10, 20, 30 years. And I think the aging population, we can get a lot of help from this. But the main risk to all this is inequality. Because with the fourth industrial revolution, you can see inequality going even much faster than today. So fighting for equality is one of the most important things. And even if you ask the top business leaders in the world, they say the same. The biggest risk for us now, it's not aging people. We can solve it technologically. It's not the young people, as I think Marcia from Ukraine, she tended to see it. The biggest risk is inequality for all people, between countries, and inside of countries, and we need to invest significantly more in equality. And the good news is that it will help us also to create economic growth and jobs and trust and stronger societies. When I was a student, all the theories said more inequality is good for economic growth, because if you get more inequality, people get up in the morning and they do more, they work harder. Today we know it's wrong. Equality is good for societies, it's good for growth and for jobs, it's good for environmental protection and social protection and coherency in our society. So those are some of the main issues to focus on. But I think a lot of problems can be solved. The fourth industrial revolution will come, and it's a fascinating world. Thank you.
Could I just add on the aging population?
30
because
seconds, because
1 minute. Your first, you know what will be the first effect on this aging population, not just in all the countries, but in Europe generally? Nobody will be able to pay your pension. And leaving the joke apart, this should be one of the top priorities in terms of the policies. And this is what I initiated. It's one project called the Young Families, where I want to break, and I am advocating, and maybe you will help if you believe in this type of policy, to break the circus that a young person, young family is facing. The first job, the first house, and the first child. Because if you don't help them at the beginning of the road, you cannot expect them to perform. And I would like Europe and European Union not to be an aging continent as we are facing. And that goes to what you said rightly, very pointedly as well, that fighting inequality, it is crucial to this. But promoting policies for the young families and the youth should be a priority, not just in talks at Brussels, but actually making a top priority in every single European Union country. Thank you.
President Miltelevsky, would you like to make the last comment to close the session?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, when I talk to my younger colleagues and also the business leaders, as I now deal mainly with the business people, I try to teach them one principle, just one. Listen to the people, don't talk too much. Because our managers could speak endlessly, and explain everything. At the end, people don't follow. To some extent, today's discussion also is fantastic because we exchange so many problems, and we are so happy because we didn't find any solution for them. So we can easily go home, have a nice dinner, and organize a next conference. And the same is at the European level. When they meet at the European Council, and this is what we will observe very shortly in Bratislava. Bratislava is 10 days time. They will meet, discuss for 2 days, and then come out with a fantastic conclusion that digital platform and digital Europe is an answer to the present questions. And they will go home very happy. Yes. And to some extent they are very right. Yes, because yes, it's always better to be digital than analog. Or to have a single market than a divided market. Or to be young and beautiful than to be old and awkward. Yes, I agree. But also when one of the colleagues asked about Britain, and it is visible so much in the US, there's in fact one very dominating problem which is visible, particularly in Western democracies. And this is the greatest challenge by far of the Western democracies. In the US, two-thirds, almost 70% of the population is saying that we feel nostalgia of the past. But the same is in many Western European countries. So the older generation is feeling a big nostalgia of the past. They are saying 30 years ago, because the question was exactly about how do you like those days 30 years ago, they're saying, fantastic, it was fantastic. As economists, as sociologists, I can to some extent prove because the wages in comparative terms were better, quality was slightly better, so it is defendable. But they feel nostalgia of the past. And they say, we want to be as it was 30 years ago. And this is what so many people in Britain said. We don't like migration, frankly speaking, but because we are British, we don't want to admit it openly. Now it's easier to say that we actually are fed up with migration. That's the second reason. And thirdly, we have a strong reminds of the old those days when we were a big empire. So when you have this situation, and our colleague from Netherlands quite correctly indicated that so many older generation went to the station polls and voted for the exit, and the young turnout was 35 or something like that, that means that they all decided about the future. If you have a politician who are not very prepared to discuss anything but digital platform, then we have a vacuum. When we have a vacuum and you are not happy to take floor because you are not afraid, you are not afraid of the future. Particularly in Western Europe, even young people, 35 years old, they could live again with the family, get some benefits and do something interesting, and they are not concerned. History, Europe is not about institution and complaining about curved cucumbers or European Commission. Europe was an idea. That was the reason why Europe was established. Europe with its values, and so many people stood for those values. Today, nobody's ready because nobody's concerned. Nobody's afraid. Are you afraid of the conflicts, of wars between France and Germany? Nonsense, you will say. Impossible. Impossible. Yes, okay. So, if we are not that concerned, if we don't find any case to stand for, there's more and more room for cynical politicians who are more than happy to explain everything in one sentence, and they fight for it. And to end up, because I don't want really to sound too pessimistic, to end up, maybe a game changer will happen in November, because in the November, in the US, still the forces, I would say, if more democratic will win, and Trumpism will be stopped as a new ideology, then it could have a tremendous impact also on the European affairs. But if Donald Trump wins with his wonderful ideology, then we will learn how serious problems are accelerating in Europe and how much responsibility will be facing you in the nearest future. And to maybe, okay, this is typical, you know, you don't know how to end up. But what I would like to say, in Poland over the last maybe 10 years, the only genuine protest I saw was the protest organized by the young. So now I want to contradict myself. When there was a new legislation proposed regarding ACTA in Poland. And suddenly the government learned that there are hundreds of thousands of young people organized, well organized, surprisingly to everybody, well organized and easily, clearly indicating their wishes and expectations. So maybe that was a good symbol, maybe also for the European case, for some of the European basic values, the youth could organize using this beautiful, how you call it, digital platform, yes, and then express their views not only about inequality, which is nice, not only about some better benefits, but also about values, because that was what the founding fathers of Europe were fighting for, what your parents were fighting for, not parents, your grandparents were fighting for, and I would not like you to fight for that again in next couple of years, because madness has to be stopped at the earliest point until it is simply too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to personally thank all the panelists for their very high-level speeches, all of you for your patience and attention. And I would just close with this motto, which I think would summarize the topic of our panel. The motto is of the European Youth Forum, and it says, "Nothing should be done about young people without young people." Many thanks. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.